Hi everyone, I'm Miss Lydia from the Boston Library. Thank you so much for joining me for our Craft Friday project. Today we are going to be painting pumpkins. So I'm going to show you 3 different techniques to paint some pumpkins. I have a couple of real pumpkins over here. The longer shape on those is going to work really well for the drip painting technique. Then I bought a couple of the small craft pumpkins, and these I'm going to paint to look like donuts. And then this larger one I'm going to use a henna technique on. So the first step, I have a bunch of acrylic paints and a foam paintbrush. I'm going to put a base coat on my henna technique one and the donut ones. So for the donut ones, I'm going to paint the bottom half of both of these pumpkins with kind of a donut colored brown paint here. And then one of them is going to have white frosting and one is going to have pink. And then on the henna technique one, because I want it to show up as clearly as possible, I'm going to paint this one kind of a light cream color. So I'm going to take my paints, make sure they're really well shaken, and I have some paper plates here to use, and I'm going to squirt some of the paint onto there and start coating them. This project does take a little bit of time because you do have to let it dry in between coats. So I painted the bottoms brown and I have my pink frosting and my white. Depending on the underlaying color of the pumpkin, you might need to do a couple of coats. So while I'm waiting for this to dry, I'm going to show you how to do the drip technique on a larger pumpkin. So I'm going to pick colors. You need at least 2 colors to do this. I'm picking 3 for the first example. So I'm going to do black, white, and a little bit of orange, which seems like overkill on a pumpkin, but it will add a little bit of interest into that. So I'm going to start with my white, and I've already cleaned off the pumpkin so that there's no mud on it, and I'm going to basically outline the area around the stem. So I've shaken up my paint, and I'm just going to start layering it on, and you can kind of do like a zigzag pattern so that it starts to trickle down. And then you can continue to carry that down further down the pumpkin. You want to make sure that your workspace is very carefully covered because this does sometimes drip all the way down to the bottom. These will also take quite a long time to dry, up to about 24 hours depending on how thick you get the paint on it. So you want to make sure that you have them someplace that you can leave them. After I've got the amount of white paint that I want on there, I'm going to take my next color, and I'm going to do the same thing, but try to stagger it with where the white is. And then you can also use a toothpick to drag some of the color down further. You can get a little bit more of a marbled effect that way. You can even drag it slightly sideways to get more coverage. And you can always go back through and add more of those first 2 colors as you're going, just to determine how much coverage you want. Most of your paint is going to gather right around the stem, so that's where you really want to use the toothpick to kind of drag some of that down. That'll also help it to dry a little bit faster. Once I have that done, I'm going to take my last color, and this one I'm going to just do a few little streaks of. And once that's done, I'm just going to leave it alone and let it dry. If I tip that down a little bit, you can see a bit more of the design from the top there. On this pumpkin, I'm going to do a different color combination, so I have green and purple, following that same technique. Once I've got those 2 colors in, I'm going to add just a little bit of black as an accent in this one. As these dry, the paint will continue to run down the sides, so you want to make sure, again, that you have something underneath it to catch all of that excess paint. And there we have the second one. So if you look again at this first one, you can see that the paint has continued to run quite a bit down the sides of that. If you want, you can also let it dry fully and then tip it upside down and do the same technique from the other way so that the entire pumpkin is covered. I tend to like to leave a bit of the base still uncovered. I think it looks cool because then you can kind of see the melting effect of it. Once my paint is dried, it's time to add some sprinkles. So I have some bright colors here. I have green, yellow, purple, and orange. And I'm going to take a fine tipped brush and just add some dashes all over. Once you're done adding the sprinkles, you get a pumpkin that looks like that. On my white pumpkins, I'm going to use a black Sharpie to draw a henna-like design. I'm going to basically be using the segments of the pumpkin to base my design off of it. So I started with some petals, and then I'm going to use a series of dots and other shapes to fill in the rest of the pumpkin. You can keep building off of the design using leaves, dots, and circles, and you can see my finished product there. Hope you enjoyed today's project. We'll have some more details on some other fun Halloween crafts coming up next week.